So on this channel, I like to demystify a couple of things, and I find it very important to understand what it really means to become existentially free in some spiritual sense, without it making about a personal narrative of self-completion, or finding God, or becoming one with the universe, or being spiritually superior than other people, or finally becoming enlightened, or finding the truth of the universe. All of these framings, as true as they might be in some context, they actually distract from the thing that really matters here, which is to integrate whatever causes you a dissatisfaction in life. Whatever's causing you dissatisfaction in life is not about some spiritual narrative or some sort of goal you need to accomplish. It's just the natural evolution to follow if you want to become a more deeply and happily integrated person. And there are three aspects that facilitate this, which are like the three components of awakening. Now, awakening is a very mystical word because, what are you awakening to? But you're really awakening towards the nature of reality, which isn't something external. The nature of reality is actually the nature of your own mind. How is your mind and your body processing your emotions, interacting with your own thinking, and integrating this into a nervous system that actually works? And all of this is physical. Like, it's not some abstract idea, but it is represented by how do you engage with the world? How do you engage with yourself? How do you experience your life? You have first the logical layer, which is how awakened are you in the term of thought and language, which on one level you might see the importance of logic, where you're awakening to the fact that logic really talks about reality in some truthful sense. That when we use language, we're tapping in some sort of pattern matching recognition and therefore can understand reality by just following logical conclusions. This might be one layer of a head awakening or like a logical awakening. But then on a higher layer, I don't want to just say one layer or two because it goes kind of infinitely deep. But on a higher layer, once you have recognized how good logic is, you then might to notice its limitations and how logic is truly not like the nature of reality itself, so to say, but a human construct made by language and social habituation over many, 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 many years. And that if you really try to find out what is true, language kind of perturbs what is true a bit, because things might legit be true and wrong at the same time. And the only reason why we don't understand that is because we are working with binaries the moment we work with language. When you say top, then the contrary is down. And without the opposite, well, you couldn't make sense of it. It would be it would be very confusing. Now, since when you awaken, what you are realizing is the nature of reality, and the nature of reality is that existence and perception is one thing, you start to notice that this duality within logic stops kind of making sense. And when I say that experience is like one thing, to like break it down in some logical way, it's just really the idea that you are one consciousness. Like you as a person are not split in any way. You are always experiencing the full experience of your reality 24/7, and it's not something that you can like escape. And from this point of view, you can realize that when you use language, you're kind of trying to force a binary onto reality. You're kind of trying to say, okay, this is red and not green. And by this word, you have tautologically defined it this way. So it's true. But you might also recognize that things can be true and wrong at the same time. For example, you might feel very strongly about the fact that reality is determined and all of the universe is just basically following its natural consequences as some sort of determined destiny. And therefore you feel everything is flowing naturally, automatically, without you being able to control anything. And at the same time, you might recognize this truth as, like as some foundational part of reality, that everything is conditioned and has cause and effect, and therefore everything is basically like determined. But then I also notice, wait, I do have actually a sense of agency here. Like I am in the present moment, considering options, being aware of these options, understanding these options, and then making a choice for all sense and purposes. I can be free within this context that I've established because I cannot really distinguish from the outside the difference of free will and determinism. All I see is movement, and I seem to flow with this movement. Now, from this point of view, then, logic starts to be kind of silly. Like, it is very useful and practical, but not the ultimate truth. And then this ability to be able to think in superpositions is what the logical awakening is on a deeper level. And you can notice how attached people are to their logic when they are like very attached to their ideologies or their belief systems or their political frameworks or whatever other opinion you might throw at them. Like, if they strongly need to defend it, it's because the logic is now entrenched within their identity, and therefore you see yourself as fundamentally separate and can't fully awaken. The same then works with the emotional layer, which is often to be coined as the heart. So you have the head and the heart, which is logic and emotion, and the emotional is usually what people need to process through deeper dissolve the sense of self or ego. Usually we have a ton of bad experiences from the past, which can be really everything. It could be just one awkward event that's spiraled for like many years in your head slightly, and now you just feel awkward in like social situations. Or it could be something that you feel guilty about, that your life kind of betrayed somebody and you harmed them. And even though you don't think about this for like 4 years, there's still something running underneath that is kind of running the show. And if you were to truly look at it and let it in, and not to rationalize it or conceptualize it, you would feel a ton of negative emotion. Almost everybody carries a lot of negative emotion within them, and they use the logical apparatus to like suppress the emotional experience and pretend that there is not more to feel, and to use the mind to distract from how much there is to feel. And when you let yourself feel all of the stuff, like you actually take some time meditating or introspecting and feeling into it, then you might have a heart awakening where you notice that all of these feelings, they are really flowing through you. And as much as they hurt and as real as they hurt, they are not you. They are also happening within the experience of consciousness as like one entire system, like a self-organizing system. And the emotional aspect is just one part of it. And you can actually integrate it in feeling it. Like, you don't need to push it away. You don't need to ignore it. You don't need to pretend that you have already felt everything. No, you can feel more. And incredibly so, there comes a point where you have exhausted all of the emotional energy of your past. Oftentimes, when you have an emotional experience where you're like very sad and you feel into the sadness, then you have a memory about something that happened to you when you were younger, or maybe even from like 2 days ago. And then you notice how the sadness is really connected with the logic there, because the logic is helping you trace the event that is making you feel sad now. And what often happens is that we don't want to admit to ourselves what we're still feeling sad about. Like, we kind of want to push the emotion away. Another tricky way the mind does this, which I've seen time and time again, is nihilism, which also kind of relates to some sort of logical awakening stuff, because you are realizing, okay, words are not actual reality, they're just some sort of way I'm playing with reality. Well, then everything is meaningless. And then it uses this idea that everything's meaningless to not feel more of your own internal emotions. So the beauty in this emotional processing stuff is that you then get to experience more from all sensations. Like, it's not just that you decide to feel more of the negativity that's inside of you, but now suddenly air on skin feels more pleasurable, light hitting your eye feels more pleasurable, just breathing air feels more pleasurable. There's so much that is getting locked in your mind by not feeling your emotions. And once this is released, then you start to feel that, whoa, reality is actually quite pleasurable, and there's a lot to experience that is very happy. Because, yeah, emotional stuff isn't just negative stuff, it's also the positive stuff that we kind of want to explain away or pretend that it's not that big of a deal. Because what happens if we actually allowed to feel all what we want to feel? How much love is there that we are actually scared of? And then on the third layer, you have the nervous system, which can also be called about as the gut. But I very much prefer to make it about the nervous system. I find it more accurate and more precise. The same with like emotions instead of heart, or logic instead of head. Because this is really what it is about. Now, the nervous system aspect is like the most profound aspect of this. And it is where spiritual traditions or mystical traditions talk about Kundalini energy, which, if you're not versed in this topic, sounds just some sort of woohoo magic. And I would imagine that most humans don't believe in this stuff. But it is a map for something that's actually real, which is just how your nervous system integrates all the experiences of your life. As a reminder, the nervous system is what is deeply anchored in your sense of survival. So you have this sense of wanting to flee when there's danger, or you want to freeze, or you want to fight when, you are in the perception that there might be danger around. Nowadays, we don't really go for hunts anymore, so the danger is most likely social, relating to your work or friendships and other stuff, but it can also be survival related, of course. Now, the nervous system awakening is often to be talked as very dangerous, because what can happen is that you have some sort of realization in the nervous system department about the nature of your primal existence, or like your foundational existence, which can either be about your mortality, about the mortality of others, or also about, and here it gets a bit trippy for some, about your own immortality. Because when you realize yourself as oneness and as all consciousness or universe, then you can also feel immortal, which also can either be very loving and pleasant or very scary and frightening. So if you have a nervous system awakening before you've had an emotional or logical awakening, well, now you're in for a lot of terror, because you are actually not, you have not built an architecture that is ready for this. And this is where people usually fall into psychosis, they get psychotic, they get schizophrenic, they might lose their contact with reality, they feel that they are literally God, or there's like some sort of solipsism going on and all of the universe revolves around them and they're like the only piece of the universe and the universe is all for them. Or you start to feel like super disconnected from ordinary people. You start to feel like you're dissolving or literally dying, and you feel your death is imminent all the time. There's also something called thanatophobia, where people have just an awful fear about death and just cannot stop thinking about their own death. All of this goes into the nervous system category, which usually the best way to work with the nervous system is to focus on the ethereal nature and the infinite nature of also what is pleasant. Because often we get too scared and focus so much on the fear aspect of it and the amount of the fear that we don't understand that all of the pleasure that we experience and all of the positive aspects of life that we experience, that it is deeply related to this eternal sense of presence, to this eternal sense of safety. And when you have it deeply integrated into your nervous system, all of the stuff that has happened to you and the logical frameworks of your mind, and you integrate it into the nervous system, which at the end means more feeling, maybe a more profound way of feeling, which often there people report the sense of spirituality, but I don't think you need the spirituality frame really. It's just really a biological process. And from there, you then start to integrate all aspects of your mind and become an extraordinarily peaceful self. This is all the different aspects where your ego basically gets awakened to its own nature. What are the mechanisms that which really encompass it, and why does it still suffer? Because once this is really integrated, it's not some sort of magical space where you cannot ever suffer anymore. Like there's still pain, like physical pain exists, but your mind doesn't cling anymore to the emotion. Emotion flows through you. Your mind doesn't cling anymore to any belief systems, just belief systems flow through you. You're not attaching your identity to anything in your experience, but also at the same time feel identical to the experience itself. And this is what I help people with in the ego architecture audit, to analyze which part in their ego is developed and how developed is it really. I test how deep these different aspects of realization go, and then I push people to either realize something deeper or see where the edges of their own understanding is. If you want the full document about how this process works in my ego architecture audit, then you can click in the link in the description and find the PDF where I explain everything. This work is really the most important work a human can do, because it is deeply related to all your sense of peace, your sense of well-being, and just your sense of existential satisfaction. And most philosophy is really about this, and it just uses logic to kind of avoid the emotional aspect of it, avoids the mystical aspect also of the nervous system part often, more often than not. And the spiritual frameworks of infinite consciousness and awareness, and being detached from your emotions, they play on the nervous system and the emotional parts, and they kind of brush the logical part to a side and pretend like it doesn't matter or it doesn't really exist, and as if logic is just a human creation and it doesn't really relate to anything real. And I think that's also incomplete. There's clearly a somewhat intellectual component to awakening as well, although you don't need to have like something figured out as some sort of framework. It's really the absence of frameworks and the ability to see the truth in any framework. So this is the machinery of it all. And I sometimes wonder how much can I directly talk about this machinery, because especially in the realm of nervous system awakening stuff, I know that I can say things publicly that for some people will be destabilizing. Like when I make a video like the non-duality implies that you are implicit in all of the horrors that other people have committed, then I'm kind of poking at people's nervous system when they might be not ready for it. But I think most people are very good at rationalizing this away, or just kind of not letting it happening, like not letting this to be deeply integrated in them, because there are a lot of defense mechanisms. And I do think that there's some ways you can poke at nervous system stuff without being extremely destabilizing. But I think I will put a lot more deeper nervous system stuff, or also more like out there ideas that I cannot verify with my own experience directly, where I'm also going to be more personal in my Substack. So check out my Substack if you haven't already. For me, it's very important that I'm able to create clarity about all of these different topics, both in a grounded physicalist language that doesn't require any sort of spiritual mystical framework, but then also to not kind of ignore the traditions where it comes from, and to see that there's reason behind even old religious traditions. And this is not just Buddhism or Taoism. I also mean Christianity, and I also mean Islam. There's really a truth kernel in all of these religions and all of old traditions. And it's always this recognition of oneness with the universe, and oneness with existence, and oneness in the present experience of here and now. And this is where the idea also comes from, that people are already perfect, or things are already enlightened, because things pretty much are how they are. Like, it's a tautology understanding itself. But then there is a true component in your body and in your brain and in your nervous system that once you integrate it and understand it deeply, your life does transform. Your experience with your own purpose, your experience with your own meaning, your experience with your own emotions, your experience with your own logic and philosophy and frameworks, they all come upstream from how integrated you are within your nervous system and within your different components of your life, and how well you understand yourself. So to understand yourself deeper, I recommend you watch this video next.